Well, Jim, first of all, I was hearing today that you're now the second longest serving manager of Dundee United, behind Jim McLean, who was obviously at United for almost 22 years. Just how do you feel about that, and how much does that mean to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously I've got a bit to go before I can catch up with Jim McLean, but delighted to be here for the length of time that I have been up to now, obviously just over 3 years. It's an unusual thing, I suppose, in the modern game. That longevity is not something that we're often used to, but I've loved every minute of the time that I've had here at United. We've had some good success together. We've went through some difficult periods as well. This season has been a disappointment in terms of not being able to get the top six, but I think that's only natural in this game. You've got to be able to enjoy the good times and then stick together through those difficult moments. I've had some great support from everybody at the club, from my backroom team, from the owner, from the chief executive, and I think we've had some good times. We've made some good progress, I think, both on and off the pitch, which is important, and to have the backing of the board of directors and the owner is really important. I think we're only still at the very early stages of the project and where we want to eventually take Dundee United. We've seen good parts of our player trading model already, where we have capitalised on the sale of Nico Moller in January for a substantial fee, which is part of our strategy of what we set out to do a number of years ago. And I think we've went from having one of the oldest squads in the league to having now one of the youngest squads, and a number of those players who are under contract are valuable assets, and that can only be a good thing for the club as a whole going forward. So the 3 years have been great. Enjoyed the championship promotion, enjoyed a bit of European football at the beginning of the season, and hopefully many more to come.
And of course this weekend a huge game again, a Dundee derby. You would have obviously liked to have finished in the top six, but you're in the bottom half. How important is it that you take this game seriously and ensure that you finish best of the rest of the season?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no doubt that we will be taking the game, seriously. We know what it means to the supporters first and foremost. We feel that we left ourselves down toward the tail end of the game at Dens last time out, and we want to put that right. We need a similar level of performance, but we just need to make sure that on Sunday, if we get our noses in front, that we get the job done. And Dundee are obviously in a situation where they're still very much fighting for their lives. They're still very much in the relegation battle, and their players will certainly be motivated. But these games, I think, tend to take care of themselves anyway, regardless of league position in the table. I think both sets of players will certainly want to win and want to ensure that their set of supporters has the bragging rights come the end of the game.
Will there be a sense of, a bit of revenge for what happened in the last game, because you were really on top in that match, and the way it ended, caused a lot of heartache amongst the fans?
I think I thought it was one of our best performances of the season. Unfortunately, it didn't count for much because we didn't see the job through, and only ended up taking a point on the day when anybody that was at the game, anybody who watched the game live on TV, would have seen the performance that we put in. We had so many shots on goal. We could have been 3 or 4-0 up at the final whistle, and that is still hurting us a little bit. But I think on the flip side of that, I think that performance will also motivate Dundee, because they know that they'll need to be better than what they were on the day. So we can't allow ourselves to think that we're going to have it as easy as that again on Sunday. We've prepared really well all week. The players have worked hard, and as I keep saying, week after week, there's always something at stake. We've got a number of players wanting to be involved in international games in the summer. We've got other players wanting to decide where their futures are going to be at as well. So there's a lot at stake for everyone.
Have you managed to have any contract talks with any of the players, and is there any update on anything like that, and your recruitment as well?
Yeah, we have had conversations with certain members of the squad, and obviously we're continuously looking in the transfer market to try and improve the squad for next season. We've already done some very good business with some of the pre-contracts that we've signed up already. So those conversations will continue to go on over the next couple of weeks, and when we have a statement to produce, then we will make it public in terms of what direction we're going in.
You don't have your injury troubles to seek either, with Amar Fata and Lucas Stevenson out now for the remainder of the season. How disappointing was that, and how difficult does that make your job between now and the end of the season to make sure you finish the season on a high, but does it give the opportunity to others to come in?
Yeah, it will definitely give opportunities to others, because Luca and Amar have been ever present in the starting 11 throughout the course of the campaign. So there is going to be the chance there for someone else to step in, as there was against Livingston last time out. But both Amar and Luca have been terrific for us. Luca over the last couple of seasons has probably been one of our most consistent players. Very rarely do you get a lone player that means so much to the supporters, because they just love his attitude. They loved what he gave for the jersey. It meant so much to him. He was very much like a permanent signing, and we're extremely disappointed with how the campaign has ended for him. And with regards to Amar Fata, I think he's been one of the most exciting signings that the club have had for a number of years. Supporters love seeing wingers that go and put defenders on the back foot, that are positive and direct in possession, and are creative. And Amar has scored some fantastic goals for us this season, and it's bitterly disappointing not to have both those players available going into a game of the magnitude of the Dundee derby. But as you said, it's an opportunity there for somebody else to step up.
And can you see Luca perhaps coming back again on loan, and Amar as well? What do you make of him for next season? He's obviously now attracting interest given how well he's done here this season. Yeah,
I think, look, the loan market has been one that's been very successful for us over the last couple of years. Even you look back to what Sam Dalby done last season, the amount of goals that he scored. So it's always a market that will continue to do work in. In an ideal world, you're in a position where you can sign mainly permanent players. Last summer we didn't feel we had the capability to do that. This year we maybe won't take on as many loans, but I do think the loan market allows you to sign some really good quality players, possibly on salaries that you couldn't normally afford. I think with what Luke has done over the last couple of years, I think he's attracted the attention of some really big clubs, and it will probably make it extremely difficult for us to get him back on a loan basis. He's still under contract at Liverpool, so it'll be a significant transfer fee required to get him back on a permanent basis, and very similar with Amar Fata, to be honest. The City Group made a significant investment in Amar a few years ago, and they will most definitely want a return on that investment, and I think the return that they would be looking for would be way out of reach for us.
So you've obviously made some acquisitions already, but you've got a big summer ahead of you as well to prepare for next season and make sure you have the strength within your squad to replace these people.
Yeah, I mean, the players that we have under contract, gives us a really good base to start from, and we have already began the process of identifying good targets. We've got a number of conversations ongoing at the moment with players and with their representatives. And Dundee United is a really attractive proposition for any player out there. They recognise the infrastructure that we've got, the fan base, the training facility here, and they can also see what we've done in the last couple of years with some very good young players who have been given the opportunity to develop and then improve their all-round game to move on to bigger and better things. So I think all of that will stand us in good stead going into the window, and I think we'll be stronger come the start of next season as opposed to how we were this season.
And how's your team news otherwise going into the game?
Apart from the ones that we've just mentioned there in Fata and Stevenson, obviously Trapanovsky is out as well, along with Papo. Really pleased to say that Johnny Russell and Craig Sibbald have been back in with the group this week, and both those guys are pushing for a place in the squad.
We were speaking to Johnny Russell, and he was talking about being involved in derbies in the past, and how great is it to have a person like him in the team, because he knows what it's all about, he knows what it means to the fans. Yeah, Johnny's been a great signing. I mean, I know he's been really unfortunate with the injury that he picked up 4 or 5 weeks ago in the last derby game.
He was really unlucky not to score, in fact, in that game. And had he, that shot he took on not being blocked, then it probably would have certainly secured the points for us. But we brought Johnny Russell in for his experience in the dressing room. A real familiar face who knows exactly what this type of game on Sunday means to everyone connected to Dundee United. And he's not just here to be a cheerleader either. He wants to play his part. He wants to get on the pitch and he wants to score goals. And thankfully he's back available. We've got 5 big games coming up, and Johnny will certainly play his part in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Rory Adams, are we likely to see any of Rory Adams in the goal before the end of the season?
Well, at the moment, Dave Richards has got the gloves. Dave was very unfortunate to lose his place in the team when we brought in Ashley Maynard-Brewer. But obviously, with the injury now to Ash, Dave will step back into that position for us. We've had to bring Rory Adams back from his loan at East Fife, and Rory will wait patiently on the bench for his opportunity. It may come before the end of the season. Just we'll have to wait and see.
The game on Sunday, it's the 4th time this season that they've been up. They've all been very different games. What can we expect this Sunday?
Well, I think they've all been, apart from the most recent one at Dens, where I felt it was a pretty one-sided game in our favour, albeit the result might not suggest that. I think the other 2 games were really tight games, really close and competitive, and there wasn't a great deal of nice fancy football involved in them. It was a real battle, and I think that's what we're planning for this weekend. I think Dundee will want to make amends for the performance in the last game, and I would expect this game to be quite frantic, 100 mile an hour. There's going to be a lot of aggression, a lot of physicality in the game, and we need to make sure we stand up and match that.
With the injuries that are in place, we've spoken about these already, does that give you the opportunity to have a bit of element of surprise about who you're going to bring in and play in their places?
Well, yeah, look, we've got a number of good young players in the group that we have got real high hopes for, but at the same time, I don't see the next 5 games as meaningless games either, and I don't want to make wholesale changes that's going to disrupt the flow of the team, because we've been in relatively good form of late, and I'm not just going to make changes for the sake of making changes, but at the same time, Sam Harding came into the team last time out against Livingston and performed really well, and if I can get the likes of him and young Dario Namo and 1 or 2 other young members in the squad some game time to give them that experience that's required, of course we will take that opportunity, because we have got one eye on next season as well, and we want to see how these guys can handle the pressure of playing at the highest level.
And like any season comes to an end, this is probably the biggest one of the season. It's for the end of the season games. How good is it just to have this game at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it's not very often when you finish in the bottom half of the table that you have got such significant fixtures. You tend to obviously want to be in the top 6 because you get those big games, and it's great for everybody, but Sunday it's going to be a full house. The game is live on TV. It's a derby at the end of the day, and there's not much that needs to be said to remind the players of what this particular fixture means. We've also got the Aberdeen fixture coming up in a couple of weeks as well to look forward to. And then all of the other teams that we're playing against, in particular Kilmarnock and St Mirren, these teams are fighting for their lives at the bottom end of the table to make sure that they get themselves out of those playoff positions. So there won't be any easy fixtures. We certainly won't, drop the demands that we put on the players between now and the end of the campaign. We want to finish the season off in a professional fashion, and hopefully that's with 5 out of 5 wins.
Just as you mentioned there, obviously yourselves the most comfortable team, of those in the bottom 6. And just what is the message to the players really? Is it to just finish as strong as you can and set yourselves off on a good footing for the next season? Yeah,
as always, it's to remain professional. We're not changing our preparation in terms of what we do during the week. We'll still analyse the opposition. We'll still try and identify the strengths and the weaknesses of the teams that we're going to face, and we'll try and come up with a game plan that's going to ensure we get all 3 points. So it's about maintaining the high standards that the boys have shown over the last couple of seasons, and making sure that we we finished the season on a high, and personal pride is always at stake.